What led you into the role of coaching?
It was a tragedy. It was I was going to go into the Navy, and I wanted to be a submariner. And my best friend had contracted cancer and fought for 2.5 years. He was a state champion wrestler at Cameron High School, and it was just one of those kind of deals that, you know, I admired my role models as coaches when I was growing up, and watching him go through that and what we can make an impact on young lives, and that was a way, that was kind of my vehicle. So I kind of changed my mind on how to go about it, and that's led me down this road.
So how long after high school did that happen?
This, I was in high school, and then I went to college, and originally I was going to go ROTC, and they wanted me to put a year in first. I joined the wrestling team at UCM, and everything was great, and then he contracted non-Hodgkin's lymphoma at the time. Now it's treatable, probably 80%, I guess, and at the time it was less than 6 or 7. And so he fought for 2.5 years, became my roommate after he was terminal. Came to college when he was terminal. So it was, when you're a young person, learning that lesson was unbelievable. I mean, just watching him get through the day and how he operated, and knowing that he was fighting a fight that he probably wasn't going to be able to win. And so it really had an impact on me, and it changed my life. It changed how. And then luckily, while I was there, I was under just a legendary coach, Roger Dinker, and he mentored me through that process. But it really solidified how important it was to have male role models. And wrestling's just such a great vehicle. It's an easy challenges are upon you in every direction. Obstacles are always laying there. So it's having someone strong enough to work you through that made a difference to me. And then later on, I wanted to make that difference.
Okay. So was that somebody that inspired you to become a coach, your friend?
Yeah, and it's weird. I mean, we sat down and talked a lot. I mean, it's so different. You grow up and you just don't think things like that are going to happen. When they do, we start having conversations at night that I didn't even know existed at that point in my life. But I wasn't thinking, as we age, we start thinking differently, obviously. This young man had to age so fast. And he was always mature, but man, did he mature so much when he went through that. He thought differently than I did. And so having those conversations, he never said, hey, you need to go be a coach. He was just watching him get through it, and then he was handling it and I wasn't. I was at I went during Easter this year, just recently last year on Sunday, I went to his gravesite, and I stand there as a man now, and I look back and I'm thinking, it was 35 years ago, and all the time that I've had and the things that I've been able to do, and these were all experiences he never got. And so it is unique, but the men that helped me get through that were my coaches. And it was like, that's what it's supposed to look like. And it's a heck of a lot more than teaching a single leg or something like that. So inadvertently, and then the conversations that we had came from that. I would talk to my coach, try to get it settled, then he would give me his perspective, and I just was always amazed at how mature he was and how hard he fought.
It's interesting that you said that he was that mature at a college level, and usually when I think of myself or any college student, maturity is not always
no.
up there.
Not even
so
close.
his thought process just, while he was in college versus everybody else, would have just been black and white.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and that's what I mean. He was thinking on a level that I had no understanding of, really.
Did that change the way you thought about the way you trained and the way you went about wrestling?
Absolutely.
Just his maturity towards life at such a young age,
Right.
Did that change your philosophy on wrestling at all?
Well, just, this is a young man that was like, literally, I think he was 4 and 26 or 25 his sophomore year. His junior year, he wins the state title, he's 3 and 27. Even since I've been coaching, I've never seen a young person make that big of a jump in 1 year. And I look back to the young man that you worked with this year, Jake Bears, and he was 2-2 his freshman year, and he was in the state finals the next year, and goes overtime with a guy that was undefeated. So, I watched that and say that was a huge jump. This young man made a jump that was that kind of a jump, and so it's so rare in our sport. I mean, with seedings and how true the seedings come out, to watch someone make just leaps like that. And it was simply because, he was mature always. More, he's younger than myself and Bill Biggerstaff, who was the head coach down at Lee Summit North for a long time. And we both made a pact to tell you that. I mean, we both made a pact that whoever had the first son, we would name him after him. And he had a son. He named him that. And then that young man got his 100th win in our gym at Oak Park. And so we celebrated that. It was a very special night. It was unbelievable. So.
What type of decision does a wrestler have to make in order to go from that type of jump, from going from 2-20 to being in the state finals the next year?
Well, I would say it's certainly not fixing a single leg. It's not. I do not believe that fixing technique can make that kind of jump. What normally happens is when they start putting their whole life into some form of an order. Like when we goal set, we ask them, what do you want for your life? And then we ask them, what do you want academically? And then we ask them, what do you want wrestling-wise? And I think until they get it in some format in their mind where they can make it, not departmentalize it, but put it together. It always amazes me how many young people will self-sabotage themselves. The week before districts, they break up with their girlfriend. The week before districts, they're stressed. They're under stress, and they don't handle the stress well. So then it leads to this real big event. And, next thing you know, they're late to 2 classes. They're late to a situation that puts them onto a tardy list that keeps them out of a match the week before districts or something. And you're like, and now you're at odds with them because now you're telling them, if you do that again, the next time you do that, you'll be in a situation where you cannot wrestle. And those kind of things I've seen athletes over the years that just make small errors that just keep adding up. And so the ones that make the jump, they do just the opposite of that. All of a sudden they've got their act together in class, their grades go up. I mean, I think it's what positive psychologists look at and they call it flourishing. When a person is not, they're not getting better, they're flourishing. And flourishing is not one-dimensional. It's multiple dimensions. So it's, how do they feel about their weight room workouts? How do they feel about what their schoolwork looks like? Are they comfortable enough inside themselves that they become independent and interdependent thinkers and doers with other people, where they're working well? Last night I have a conversation with one of my athletes because he picks an athlete up and throws him down wrong, bends him in half. And that's your training partner. If you hurt him, you are now going to take on a secondary training partner that's not doing as much good for you as that young person is. But they have to mature enough to say, oh, this guy's worth his weight in gold. I mean, he's the guy that's going to get me what I want. And until they start putting it, that whole I'll do it myself thing, that's not enough. I mean, until they can start, I have another one this year that had odds with their parents. They got at odds with their parents. And all of a sudden that support system that had been so powerful for them starts disintegrating. And so it leads to indecision on the young person's part. And that just can't happen. I mean, if you really want the whole thing, you got to be mature enough to hold their relationships. And that's another thing that Charles Scott did so well. I mean, he needed support around him so much because of what he was fighting. He was very open for it and actually pulled you towards him. And boy, if we could learn that lesson, if we could really sit there and say, I'm not going to get what we want unless I keep these people with me. And then they would respond differently. I think they would, take the trash out for their parents and not get into an argument with them over it. It's too valuable. But until we start thinking that way, I don't know that we make those huge changes.
Do you think, my college coach often said that you're either looking for a way up or a way out. Do you think that I mean, from what you're saying, that applies in wrestling, but also in all the other facets of life?
Absolutely. I can't agree more. I think that, the guys that are looking for the way up, they're obviously looking for something to change from what they've been doing. Us taking advantage of your expertise in the weight room, if we're not smart enough to accept something new there, then we're missing out. We have to look at it and say, now, there are people out there that's going to think, well, what we've done worked, so we're going to, stay with it. Well, okay, but if you're constantly looking for the next thing that's coming around, and be smart about it. I mean, you have to choose wisely. I mean, you don't walk into a shoe store and pull a shoe that because you like the way it looked, it doesn't fit you. I mean, it still has to fit, but throwing that aside, moving up means change. And humans don't deal with change very well. So you have to be ready and be that open-mindedness to where you look for change and you look for it as positive, knowing there are going to be micro and sometimes even major failures along this new path that you're taking, because that's not the path you're used to. And there's so many people that are just they're not confident enough in themselves to have that happen. That's why, wrestlers, I think, sometimes can make that jump, because they're confident in themselves that they're going to put on a singlet, they're going to walk out, shake hands, no special equipment, and fight. Well, a person can do that, then normally you can get them to do that. But the ones that covet and hang on to stuff, it's just like that thought that if you're not advancing, then other people are. You're really going backwards.
Right.
So this whole, I love what George Bernard Shaw said. We do not get on in this world by holding ground. Only by going out and getting well hammered will you achieve greatness. And so I think there's that process of going out and getting well hammered. I'm going to advance, but that advancement hurts. And there's just so many people that's not ready to do that.
Yeah. I think I read a quote one time from Kelsey Anderson that said something like, if you're not embracing innovation, you're going to get your ass kicked by somebody who is.
Who is.
Yeah.
I love that one.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What was the transition like from being a successful competitor to a successful coach?
Hard. My first job, my first real job was at a very successful high school. And it was with my high school coach. So he always told me, when you get out, you're coming back here, and I'll get you a job. And he did that. And, he and your coach used to battle all the time. It was awesome. I always enjoyed watching Coach Jeffries and how well his kids did. I mean, he taught everybody lessons. And my coach was like that too. He was an innovator. He brought things to the table that was different than other people were doing, and intensity with it. And they both had success. They both went up a different mountain, but they both ended up on top. And so, to me, I enjoyed watching that as a young person, and I knew that I needed to go back and get more, because what I got from him was that as a competitor, and now I needed to get the stuff from him as a coach. I need to go back and there's no way I can ever be sitting on equal terms with that man, but being able to at least talk to him collegially, that was a deal that I felt that was something I needed. I went back, I got that part. Could I stay another year or two? Absolutely. But during that time, a job opened up, and I jumped to take this head job. When you're out on your own, all of a sudden, though, I'm trying to use all of the experiences that I had, and I'm sure that you dealt with this as you came out of a college room in a college setting and then going to a college workout setting where people are setting the bar extremely high, and then walking into a high school and going, really? There is such a drop-off there. And those kids don't have any idea about what that drop looks like. But yet you walked out of that environment right into this one, and that is, it's like stepping into a place you don't have oxygen anymore. And so for me, I don't think I did a very good job on that. I worked hard, but being young, I was very impatient. I'd never been on a losing program. And you go, and all of a sudden you're the head, and you're losing. There was desperation, terror, all kinds of negative words being all the time. And the young people, to be honest with you, were not embracing change. Because after we lost 3 duels in a row, I was like, okay, we're doing morning practices. Then no one showed for morning practice. And then I was like, okay, now what do I do now? And the administration really wasn't, they hadn't been used to that either. They were kind of used to being on the bottom end of the tier. So to them, they were like, ooh, let's not rock this boat, you know. And so that really, that taught me a lot. I'm glad I went through that. I'm glad I only had to go through